It's Wednesday, and you all know what that means. It's time for another episode of the Life in the Movies podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts. My name is Ryan Camp. Thank you all so very much for tuning in. This week, with spooky season just around the corner, it's time for the October preview, and we'll also be talking about Jessica Jones Season 1, Episode 12, the penultimate episode before the season finale. I'm so looking forward to all of it, but first I got to introduce my co-host, the main man, Jacob Martin. Jacob, how you doing, good sir?
I'm doing pretty good tonight. I'm excited to talk about the October movies. I love doing the monthly preview episodes. It's fun watching all the trailers and sharing our thoughts on them and being excited about which movies to check out and what movies we're dreading to check out. The monthly previews are a lot of fun, and of course, I'm excited to talk about Jessica Jones as well.
Yeah, thank you as always for putting together the list. It really does help, so thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, before we do get into all of that, let's talk about a couple things that we've been watching lately. So, Jacob, take it away.
Several movies I've been watching lately. I got a few to share. One, I can't believe I rewatched this movie recently from my Sony Pictures animation series. I was dreading this one, folks. The Emoji Movie, the epic disaster piece of a film. Oh man,
You know
I
those commercials that law firms do? Like, if you have been diagnosed with mesothelioma, you may be entitled to compensation. Someone should release a commercial like that. If you or a loved one have watched the Emoji Movie, you may be entitled to compensation.
I suffered through that turd twice.
You give my man some royalties, Sony. What are you doing?
Well, we all know this movie. We all know how bad it is. It's terrible. Even in 2022, my thoughts on it haven't changed. The animations, it's not horrible, but it's just bland and uninspiring at best. And the story is just like a lame retread of like some of the best animated movie, like Toy Story and Wreck-It Ralph, but just in the phone. The way it does the world building and actual pop culture references felt dated and lazy, and it just felt like a lame promotion of your smartphone, and it just came off as clunky and awkward. I don't like any of the characters. I mean, you got Patrick Stewart as a poop emoji. Like, no, that's a bad waste of an actor right there.
Yeah, that's
I'm not a fan of the message where it's all teenagers have no emotions unless they play with their emojis. I'm like, no, that's a horrible message, and you're not acting like the real world when you're doing a message like that. It's like these filmmakers have no idea how teenagers actually act, and it shows in the final film. I will say, on a positive note, one thing you can take away from the Emoji Movie is that this movie did so bad, it was such an embarrassment that it made Sony reevaluate their strategy, and it's inspired them to do better. Because a year after this, we got Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse, which was a fantastic animated movie. And then as recently as 2021, we got The Mitchells versus the Machines, which was my favorite movie of that year. So, in all seriousness, the Emoji Movie, I think, is the thank for Sony's turnaround and actually making legit quality movies, because I think some insider or studio head at Sony is like, man, we can't keep making bad movies like this again. We need to have quality. We need to compete with Disney and Pixar. And so you got to be thankful that the Emoji Movie was the one that did the big turnaround.
Yeah, it could be argued that with the Emoji Movie being the moment where they hit rock bottom, but they landed with both of their feet on rock bottom, and that gave them enough momentum to jump back up. And so with Into the Spider-Verse, Mitchell's versus the Machines, and the upcoming Across the Spider-Verse parts 1 and 2, Sony is looking like a legit contender, because I can honestly say that I've enjoyed more things from Sony than I have from Disney and Pixar over the past couple of years, and I don't think I'm too off the reservation by saying that.
Yeah, it's quite impressive seeing the big sudden increase in quality. And I think what's even more fascinating to come is that Sony's recently announced, along with Illumination, believe it or not, that those two studios have recently signed deals where they plan on making more adult animated movies, which is going to be interesting going forward.
Well, I mean, Illumination is making that Super Mario Brothers movie, so I don't know how adult they're truly going, but I mean, it will be interesting to see what they end up doing.
Yeah, definitely.
Anyway, what else you got?
What else do I got? The recent celebrating Disney that I just watched. Is Mickey, Donald, Goofy, The Three Musketeers. This is a highly underrated Disney movie. I grew up with it. It was a direct-to-video film released in 2004. And I gotta be honest, I still highly enjoy this movie to this day. And it just shocks me that nobody talks about this film. It's just hidden in the shadows. I don't know if it's because it was made by the direct-to-video division and people tend to brush that with like the worst of the direct to video sequels, but this movie is actually pretty entertaining. It's a pretty solid retelling of the Three Musketeers with Mickey, Donald, and Goofy. It's got that classic Disney humor you expect with those characters. I enjoyed the animation in this movie, and it's actually so well polished. It doesn't look cheaply made like most of the direct to video sequels. Like, this could have been released in theaters, and you think it'd be a high quality movie. The movie is actually shockingly short. It's only like 68 minutes long, but the movie doesn't overstay its welcome. It knows how to tell its story with that short of a runtime. Has the jokes in there, has the music in there, has the humor in there, and it tells a good story with the classic Disney characters. I wish more people talked about this movie and gave it some love because I think this movie is low key pretty awesome.
I forget who plays the Cardinal in that movie? Who plays the bad guy? Or which Disney character?
The Disney character that's the bad guy is Pete.
Oh, that makes too much sense.
Big
Yeah,
legged Pete.
that makes a lot of sense. Because
Oh
he
yeah, he is such an underrated villain in general because he's just so over the top and diabolical in his schemes. There's actually one part that cracked me up watching it is where he attempts to decapitate Donald Duck, and Donald is putting two and two together on who the bad guy is. He's like, Captain Pete, and Pete's like, "Ooh, I'm just in a good mood."
I have not seen this movie in about a minute. I do remember seeing it. I just have not seen it in about a minute, and I've always heard good things about it. And really, the only Goofy movie that I've seen is a Goofy movie, which, I mean, people call it underrated these days, but I think it's gotten a lot more love after its release in like present day than even when it was released back in 94 and 95. I think that movie is really, really good.
Yeah, I agree. I've always liked a Goofy movie, even when I was a kid.
Yeah, it has some legit serious goofy moments, like after the whole big thing where he realizes his son has been lying to him, and that whole car chase, it's both silly but also really serious as well. Is that scene where Goofy pulls over and slams the car door and Max is like, "Dad," and Dad's like, "Why bother?" I'm like, "Whoa, I did not expect a turn like this in a Goofy movie, but you really cannot judge a book by its cover."
Yeah, it's actually a really good movie. I do recommend Mickey, Donald, Goofy, Three Musketeers as well. It's currently on Disney Plus. If you haven't seen it, definitely check it out. Share the love.
Yeah, absolutely. What else you got?
Did a recent experiment on my channel where I decided to host weekend watch parties. That video actually turned out very well for a movie I've never seen before. I decided to experiment with one and share my initial reaction on this movie in a watch along style format. And I experimented with the 1989 action film Next of Kin. This film stars Patrick Swayze as a hillbilly turned city cop. And he has a brother named Bill Paxton, or played by Bill Paxton, I mean, who gets murdered by a gang of gangsters. one of which is played by Adam Baldwin, who later went on to play the character Jane in the underrated show Firefly. And so Patrick Swayze ends up debating with his redneck hillbilly family on how to assess the situation. Patrick Swayze is all by the book. He wants to do the proper law and order justice type way. But his hillbilly family is all eye for an eye, revenge. And so that's like the big dilemma of the movie. There's some good action sequences in there, couple good chase scenes, pretty good cast in there as well. Some of which are actors who were cast long before they became big. You have like Ben Stiller is even in this movie in one of his earliest roles, along with Helen Hunt, who is the wife of Patrick Swayze's character. And then one of Patrick Swayze's brothers, one of his redneck brothers, you'll get a good laugh out of this, Ryan. It's Liam Neeson.
Oh
And,
wow.
and Liam Neeson actually has a redneck accent in the film. So imagine picturing Liam Neeson talking like a redneck with his Irish slipping out occasionally.
Imagine him doing the Taken monologue in that accent.
I don't know who you are or what you want, but I've been taken with a particular set of skills. I will find you and I will kill you.
By God. I just can't imagine. What made you want to watch this? Just out of curiosity.
Well, I actually have a 5 film collection of just random action movies, and this weekend watch party, a lot of which is my extension of the vlog and the movies, which I used to do before I downplayed or before I cut some of the videos on my channel. The vlog and the movies. One of my series was I had a bag with slips of paper featuring movies in my physical media collection I had never seen before. And before I cut that vlog and the movie series, I was planning on doing Next of Kin. That was one I got out of the bag. But I never got to make that video. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna try this watch party thing with Next of Kin. And this 5 movie collection also has Under Siege with Steven Seagal, Unknown, also starring Liam Neeson. The Last Boy Scout, which if you haven't seen it, it's highly underrated. It stars Bruce Willis and directed by Tony Scott. And I think the other one is Tango and Cash, which is on that collection, which stars Sylvester Stallone and Kurt Russell.
I actually saw Unknown in theaters. It's actually pretty solid. It's a solid mystery thriller type of movie.
That's thank you for the recommendation.
Yeah, it's got some pretty good car chases in it, and the mystery you can kind of guess what it is, but like I said, it's still really solid. It's Liam Neeson, Diane Kruger, Frank Langella is the villain. So yeah, it's a pretty solid cast, a pretty solid movie.
Yeah, I remember seeing it advertised back when it came out, but I just never got around to seeing it.
Well, you should. You definitely should.
Yeah, and I do recommend Next of Kin as well. It's not like the most groundbreaking action movie, but I think what makes it stand out is like the hillbilly aspect of the movie, the whole hillbilly turned city cop, and the moral dilemma he has with his extended family on how to handle the justice in this really bad situation. So, if you want to see something unique, I think story wise or ethnicity wise, this is definitely one worth checking out.
Very good. Well, what else you got?
I recently watched 2 Alfred Hitchcock movies, continuing on in my Hitchcock director project. The first of them was Foreign Correspondent, which he made in 1940. It was a second Hollywood film after Rebecca. The film is actually interesting because the film came out in 1940, and the film was tackling a lot of real world issues that was going on at the time because World War II is integral to the plot, but it's set during the time in World War II history, much like in 1940, where it was mainly just a European conflict and America was still neutral. So the plot of the movie, there is a reporter played by an underrated actor named Joel McCrea. I highly recommend The Most Dangerous Game if you haven't seen it. But he is sent to Europe to investigate what's going on. He's like what they call the foreign correspondent, where he's going from one country to another. And he ends up going in way over his head. He discovers this like terrorist spy plot going on in England, and he ends up having to expose it pretty much in front of the whole world. And there's a lot of good actors in this film. George Sanders plays one of his allies, legendary British actor. A lot of Disney fans know him best. He voiced Shere Khan in The Jungle Book, and he was also in Hitchcock's Rebecca. I enjoyed seeing him in this movie. And also look for Edmund Gwynn, the actor who played Kris Kringle in the original Miracle on 34th Street, who has a small role as a bounty hunter who is sent to kill the main character at one point. It's actually quite crazy. He's a villain in this movie, but he was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that. I think the ending, I guess, can get a little preachy. It comes off as a bit cheesy in today's standards because it was dealing more with issues at the time. And watching it now, it just feels kind of hokey. Aside from the ending, the film is still a lot of fun. I do enjoy this movie mainly for it having some good Hitchcock set pieces. There's a good scene, as a suspenseful scene in a windmill. There's also a plane crash at the end that was very well directed. This is one of Hitchcock's more underrated films. If you haven't seen it, I do think it's worth checking out. If you're a Criterion collector, it's also part of the Criterion collection if you're interested in picking it up at the next sale.
Is Edmund Gwynn a bad guy in this movie? Because considering his performance in Miracle on 34th Street, I can't imagine that man hurting a fly.
He's a bounty hunter, but he only has like one scene. He's not like the main bad guy, but the one scene he's in, it's one of the highlights of the whole movie.
Oh dang! I love Miracle on 34th Street, the original. I haven't seen the remake, but I just remember just seeing him and be like, "What a nice man! Why is this woman being so mean to him? He's such a nice man." And it's just he's so good as Santa Claus in that movie.
Yep.
All
And
right,
then the other Hitchcock movie I checked out for the director project, he directed a movie. Get ready for this, Ryan. He directed a movie in 1941 called Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
wait, the Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie, that was a remake?
No, it just they both have the same title, coincidentally,
Oh, that was
which is kind
today. I was today years old when I learned that.
of yeah. Hitchcock's Mr. and Mrs. Smith involve a married couple named Mr. and Mrs. Smith who they are talking one day, and Mrs. Smith asks her husband, if you had the chance to relive our romance all over again, would you say yes? And he said no. He would prefer to be single if he was asked to do it again. And so they find out individually that there was a legal issue regarding their marriage license. And the whole time they were not legally married. And so most of the movie involves these two characters actually deciding to get separated. And yet, Mr. Smith actually still loves her and is still desperate to try to win her back when she's ready to move on because she was offended by Mr. Smith's previous comments. Yeah, this movie does not really feel like an Alfred Hitchcock film because it's strictly a comedy through and through. There's no twists and turns. There's no thrilling action scenes. There's no master of suspense stuff. This is Alfred Hitchcock directing a full on comedy. And it's as big of a misfire as you probably think it is. It's not a good movie. The acting, I would say, is pretty good. I do recommend, especially Carol Lombard, who played Mrs. Smith. I thought she was carrying the whole movie on her back and was easily the one giving it her all, even in a comedic film. There's a couple of funny sequences related to this premise, but it's made by a director who doesn't know comedy, And so the whole movie just comes off very flat, dry, and very uninspiring. And because Hitchcock isn't really known for doing silly comedy, the characters become more and more unlikable to the point where you don't want them to come back together, even though the movie wants you to root for them to come back together. It's just a very sloppy mess of a movie. And it's definitely, like I said, one of Hitchcock's biggest misfires for sure.
Yeah, this does not seem like a Hitchcock movie at all. It's one of those like I was just hearing you describe it, I'm like, there is no way. And sure enough, I guess that's what he did.
Yeah, that's what he did. But then again, he was just getting started in Hollywood. I read he signed on mainly because he liked Carol Lombard and he wanted to prove to the world that she was more than just a comedy actress. But I think there must have been something behind the scenes on this movie because even Hitchcock was very unsatisfied with this movie. I think because he realized he and comedy don't mix. He's good at having dark humor, especially in his more suspenseful films. Like even films like Rear Window and North by Northwest have a dark sense of humor to them. But when he's just doing normal, silly comedy, it falls flat on its face.
Yeah, that makes all the sense in the world to me. But is that all for you?
I got one more. Actually, that was it. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
All
Well,
right. What have you been watching?
well, it's been a pretty light load for me, mostly Scary Mania stuff. I watched for the first time George A. Romero's Dawn of the Dead. I can't remember if I talked about this last week or not, but in case I didn't, I'll just talk about it this week. Uh, there's been a lot of talk about this movie being like one of the greatest horror sequels of all time, and it absolutely is. It is a fantastic zombie movie. It's seeing it now, I kind of see this movie as like the zombie movie Rosetta Stone, even more so than Night of the Living Dead. Every trick or trope that I've seen in zombie movies after the fact are pretty much derivatives of Dawn of the Dead. I'm kind of grateful that I saw Shaun of the Dead first because there are some parts in Dawn of the Dead that Shaun of the Dead pretty much like I don't want to say ripped off, but definitely copied. I mean, it's called Shaun of the Dead and Dawn of the Dead, so clearly Edgar Wright was doing a tip of the cap to the Romero classic, and I'm not holding that against him. Shaun of the Dead is awesome. But Dawn of the Dead is really, really good. And the movie does a great job of saying something without like beating you over the head with it. It's very much like an anti like consumerism movie that George A. Romero set it in a mall because he wanted to put the commentary of comparing mall shoppers to zombies. And he would do that in Day of the Dead, which I have not seen, but the main message is that zombies slowly becoming more human than the actual humans. But that's just from the scenes that I have indeed seen. But Dawn of the Dead is just fantastic. It's got great and fun scenes of violence. It's gory, but also like kind of fun in how it executes it. It's a delicate balance that all works out really well. The effects still hold up. The acting is pretty solid. The commentary is subtle. It's not too on the nose. There's actually some genuinely emotional moments here where I was not expecting to feel that way, but I did, and I respect it all the more for it. So yeah, Dawn of the Dead is a stone cold classic.
Yeah, I haven't seen this one, although I have seen the Zack Snyder directed remake of Dawn of the Dead, which, considering it's Zack Snyder, I thought it was pretty all right for a first time movie. I do need to see the original, though. The only George A. Romero zombie film of his I've seen is Night of the Living Dead, which is a zombie classic.
Oh
So, yeah,
yes,
I
of
need to get
course.
on this one.
Yeah, and Night of the Living Dead is actually still in the public domain. I don't know how, but if you just type into YouTube Night of the Living Dead, it's all there. So I don't know how that worked, but there it is. And then continuing on with my Scary Mania watching, I watched for the first time Halloween 2. This is the first canonical sequel to Halloween from 1978, and it literally starts seconds after the first Halloween movie ends, and that was something that I really did appreciate. Trying to follow the continuity of the Halloween movies is like trying to separate the spaghetti from the sauce, so I have been told. I've only seen Halloween, Halloween 2, and then Halloween from 2018, and I still have yet to see Halloween Kills. I will watch that before it ends. But it's just one big mess. However, from what I have been able to understand from the horror community, Halloween 2 is one of the best, if not the best sequel we've ever gotten. John Carpenter did not direct this one. He was actually a screenwriter, and Rick Rosenthal directed it, but he did a really good job. There's it's definitely not as good as the first Halloween, but it's a step down, but not too steep of a step down. It's of similar quality. There's some genuinely tense moments. There's some good, like, really, really scary moments with Michael Myers. Jamie Lee Curtis is, of course, great, and Donald Pleasance really just outworked himself just in the role as Dr. Sam Loomis. It's really, really good. It really does help if you have seen the original Halloween, but if you've seen the original Halloween and have not seen Halloween 2, see Halloween 2. And I'll have more on that in my Scary Mania review.
Yeah, I have more mixed emotions on Halloween 2 because it's a pretty well made sequel. I like a lot of the suspenseful moments in it. I like that the film mainly takes place in the hospital, and that usually makes for a very creepy, terrifying situation for a slasher movie. But I don't like the twist in this movie that connects Michael Myers and Laurie Strode. That twist was just flat out stupid, and it kind of kills my enjoyment of the movie. But that's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, I can kind of understand that, but considering just the state of the continuity of the Halloween movies, it becomes so muddled that I just never realized it until watching this for the first time.
Yeah, a part of me makes me want. A part of me makes me wish we only had the original Halloween. No other Halloween movies, no remakes, no continuations of it. If it was just the original Halloween, I think it would be a less, I think even more appreciated movie than it already is.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. I could definitely see that, but at least from what I have seen, Halloween Ends hopefully should be the end of it. I say should be, but it's looking like that may not. But we'll see what happens. And then I saw one new release and one re-release. I'll talk about the new release first. I saw in theaters Don't Worry, Darling, and if you all have been following movie news lately, you all know this this production went about as smoothly as a church parking lot. There were so many bumps and bruises. Florence Pugh and Olivia Wilde getting into screaming matches. Shia LaBeouf quitting the movie when Olivia Wilde was like, "No, like I fired him," and Shia was like, "No, I quit. Here's the receipts." And so it was just a gigantic mess. But I tried to keep an open mind and seeing what happened. I was very disappointed. Now, this movie looks great, the acting is pretty solid, and it's got an interesting idea. But then the twist happens, and it's just one of those things where it's like you pull on a thread on like a wool sweater, and the more you pull, it just completely just falls apart on you. I don't know if I should discuss the twist here because it is a pretty big spoiler. Jacob, do you think I should talk about it or should I just like stay
Uh,
spoiler free?
well, I haven't seen the movie yet, and it's a pretty new movie, so I guess try to keep it vague.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that makes sense. I'll keep it vague. But basically, if I had to compare this movie to anything, I would have to say it's definitely along the lines of something like The Truman Show crossed over with something like The Matrix with just a dash of Inception. What I will say is that this movie tries so hard to be smarter than it actually is, when in reality, it's kind of a dud.
Hmm. Yeah, I've heard mixed things on this movie since its release. I've seen some enjoy it, others not caring for it as much. I'll still keep it an open mind when I do watch it, but uh, I guess your opinion on it doesn't really help much.
Yeah, and then last thing, last night, we're recording this on a Monday night, so Sunday night, my dad and I went to see the re-release of Avatar. This was being re-released in 4K in honor of The Way of Water coming out in December. I hadn't seen the movie in about a decade, so I wanted to revisit it. And I've had a bit of a complicated relationship with Avatar. At first, I loved it. Then I thought it was just okay. Then I thought it was overrated. And then I thought it was underrated. And now I'm back to the I really enjoyed this. So I've officially gone full circle on Avatar. As I sit here in 2022, I actually like Avatar quite a bit. The commentary is very in your face. I mean, they're going after a rock called unobtainium because I guess we can't find them, and MacGuffinese were already taken. And it's definitely a humans are bad for the environment. Like, it pretty much just paintbrushes the message in your face. But the movie looks incredible, especially in 4K. The CGI holds up really well. Sam Worthington is pretty good in the movie. Zoe Saldana is awesome. Stephen Lang and Giovanni Ribisi are both excellent. So it's a great movie with some very cringy parts in there. All I will say, it got me really excited for The Way of Water. That's the main takeaway.
Yeah, I'm excited to check out The Way of Water, and pretty much my thoughts on Avatar. For me, I'm one of those people that love the visuals of Avatar, but I'm not really that big a fan of the story. I feel like other movies did what Avatar did much better, like Dances with Wolves and The Last Samurai. And this just felt like a lame copycat of two better movies. Ryan, you mentioned the commentary, which I agree is so on the nose, very in your face, and kind of took away from the true enjoyment of the movie. But the movie does have good visuals. It has an amazing score from the late James Horner. And I do like the cast overall. And I'm hoping, 13 years after the original Avatar, I really hope James Cameron is on to something with The Way of Water, that he actually makes a better story that matches with the already amazing visuals that he had in the first movie.
Yeah, he's had 13 years to work on it. And I remember in 2016, he had a full draft, but then completely just threw it out because he wasn't satisfied with it. So he's had 13 years to work on this. So hopefully what we end up getting is worth the wait. That's all I will say. But I am looking forward to this with great anticipation.
Didn't they have like a mid-credit scene in the re-release that had a scene from the new film Way of Water?
To be honest, I went to see it with my dad and he wanted to leave. So if there was one, I certainly did not see it.
Ooh, okay.
I'm sure
Yeah,
it'll be released online later and I'll see it then. But I have seen the teaser trailer several times and it looks fantastic. And whoever made that song, I hope they deserve a raise because just that combined with Jake Sully like in the ocean with that whale creature looking thing, that's beautiful. And then the ending line of whatever happens to us, remember this is our fortress. And it's just like goosebump level stuff right there.
yeah, I agree on that.
All right, well, what have you all been watching lately? Leave your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to read what you have to say. All right, Jacob, let's dive into Jessica Jones, Season 1, Episode 11. We are near the end of Season 1. I can't believe it. This episode is called AKA Take a Bloody Number. The hunt for Kilgrave reunites Jessica with Luke. Trish receives some unexpected information about Simpson and Jessica. Jacob, what were your thoughts?
I thought this was a return to form. The last two episodes have been pretty underwhelming, especially when it took a detour from Kilgrave and focused more on the Simpson stuff. I did not like the turn they took Simpson in the last two episodes. So I'm glad they got that straightened out. And now we're back to Kilgrave. And not only that, but we got Luke Cage back again. Something I've missed throughout, I think, half of this season. So to see Jessica Jones and Luke Cage team up again to take on Kilgrave, that was actually pretty awesome. And even, I guess, hints at where season 2 is going to go. Like, even like the small nuggets they talked about with Simpson and the organization he was part of and how it trickles into Jessica's past. I'm like, okay, if Jessica's part of this, I'm intrigued. Just just keep getting rid of Simpson. I'm tired of seeing Simpson. Just keep it on Jessica. And I think it'd be interesting seeing where that goes. And plus the whole thing with Trish and her mom trying to re-heal wounds, I think was an interesting plot thread as well. Overall, I thought this was a good episode. There's a final fight in the end, which I thought was pretty epic. And I'm excited to see what's going to happen in the season finale.
Yeah, me too. I'm. What did you think of Trisha's and her mom like starting to kind of reunite? Question mark,
Um,
because it's heavily implied that her mom was, if not verbally abusive, I mean she was, but emotionally abusive and potentially physical. We don't know, or I think it may have been implied, but I can't remember anything specific. But what do you think about them maybe seeing that relationship kind of start to repair itself?
yeah, that was an interesting plot thread. I can definitely see Trish being turned off by that because of, all the bad abuse she had to endure as a kid. But if the mom is genuine and willing to actually be a better person, I think it'd be a powerful message on forgiveness and rehealing old wounds. And I think if that's what they're going for with it, I'm actually okay with that.
Yeah, it's interesting because I what in a couple episodes ago when Jessica visited Dorothy, Trisha's mom, at that studio, I was like, there's definitely some tension here. I hope they revisit this, and sure enough, they do, and that was far more compelling than IGH or whatever was going on with Simpson. And of course, we got the sister, and hopefully this is the last we see of her because I was really tired of this whole storyline. I felt sorry for her because I mean she lost her brother, so the compassion side of me was like, yeah, I feel bad for you, but she was just everywhere and she was just helping absolutely no one. And so I was just like, I get you're grieving, but grieve somewhere else, respectfully.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, the sister and Simpson are like the two characters I wish we don't see anymore.
Yeah, and I did we see Simpson? I straight up
No,
remember.
no, we didn't see him. He's presumably done unless they bring him back in season two. I don't know. I haven't seen the season, of course.
Yeah, neither have I, but it's looking like they're planting seeds with this IGH place, and I tried to do some digging, and it's honestly kind of vague, so I don't know where they're going to go with that, if they are going to go anywhere with that. But I mean, it's shown that IGH paid for Jessica's medical bills when she got into the accident, so there's clearly something there, and it's clear that Marvel Studios were planting the seeds, pouring some water on them, and letting the sunshine do its thing. So hopefully this bears some kind of fruit.
Yeah, I hope so, and I hope this connection with Jessica is more interesting than what they've done with Simpson.
Yeah, and like I said, it was nice not to see him anywhere here. But the ending to this episode was epic, just with Kilgrave controlling Luke this whole time, and it was just a literal man with unbreakable skin versus Jessica Jones, who has been sleeping on super strength and the ability to jump really high, if not fly. It was a great fight.
Yeah, that was easily the highlight of the entire episode. I enjoyed seeing that fight, and I'm intrigued to see what happens next.
I love the part where Jessica just rips the car door off and Cage is just like bashing it like done, done, Starsuper, and then Jessica like grabs the shotgun and just like pulls the trigger and it goes up like that. And we all know that that's not going to phase Luke in the slightest. So we're going to be seeing Luke in this finale. So all roads are going to be leading to this. So here's to hoping that they stick the landing. But anyway, what did you all think of Jessica Jones season 1, episode 11? Leave your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to read what you would have to say. All right, Jacob, let's get into the main event for the evening, the October preview. Can you believe we've made it to October doing these things? We've got 2 more previews left, and then we're getting into 2023. Let that sink in for a minute. It's
It's
crazy.
hard to believe. It's crazy.
So, in initially like looking at this list, is there a movie that like maybe stuck out to you as like that definitely has some promise?
Um, I think watching the trailers, most of these just looked kind of average to me watching the trailers, but there's a couple of them I'm like, there's definitely some potential in some of these movies, and I'm excited to dive into them.
All right. Well, I the time for talk is over, Jacob. Let's dive into these movies proper. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, let's do it. First up, Mr. Harrigan's Phone. This is a Netflix movie. When Mr. Harrigan dies, the teen who befriended and did odd jobs for him puts his smartphone in his pocket before burial, and when the lonely youth leaves his dead friend a message, he is shocked to get a return text. This is based off of a Stephen King work. It's going to be written and directed by John Lee Hancock, who directed a favorite movie of mine called The Founder, starring Michael Keaton. What do you think of this one, Jacob?
I'm intrigued. I'm obviously I enjoy Stephen King's stories adapted into movies, and when I saw the name Stephen King, I was intrigued. I like seeing Donald Sutherland in the trailer, and I'm excited to see what role he's going to bring to the story. I think the only turnoff is because you brought up John Lee Hancock. I haven't seen The Founder, so I can't comment on that. An underrated movie I love from him is Saving Mr. Banks. He did direct that one from Disney. But his previous movie was a movie that came out called The Little Things, which I thought was an absolute snooze fest of a movie with Denzel Washington and Jared Leto. I did not care for that movie at all, and it was an absolute waste of talent and premise. Because the director's last movie was a dud, that kind of hurt my score on what how I felt just watching the trailer. But at the same time, it was a well-made trailer, and I'm still intrigued by the premise, plus the fact it's based on Stephen King. So I went 3.5 on it.
I'm going to go 4. I'm going to be a little more lenient on this one just because I love the look of this cast, especially Donald Sutherland. I'm a big fan of his work. And the kid from It, the who was Bill from It, the stutterer.
Yeah.
I really liked him in that, and it's looking like this is going to be a really compelling Stephen King movie. I'll have to maybe update my ranking, hopefully. So I'll go 4 on this one. Well, next up is Terrifier 2. After being resurrected by a sinister entity, Art the Clown returns to the timid town of Miles County, where he targets a teenage girl and her younger brother on Halloween night. This trailer scared the crap out of me, Jacob. I don't know about you.
Um, it was an interesting trailer. For one thing, I'd never even heard of the first Terrifier until I'd say like a week or two ago. One of my YouTube friends covered it on his channel. And I'm like, this movie sounds crazy. And then when I compiled the list, I'm like, Terrifier 2? Wow, they made a sequel already. That's crazy. But I haven't seen the first Terrifier, so my rating is a little lower because of the fact I've not seen the first one. But it does look like a crazy slasher. I will say, like Art the Clown, is that what you said his name was?
Art the Clown,
Art
yes.
the Clown. Yeah, he looks like a crazy slasher that could join the ranks of being like a modern slasher classic, like Jason, Freddy, Michael Myers, because it sounds like he's like an absolute menace just from watching the trailer. So, because I haven't seen the first, I'm gonna go 3 just because I haven't seen the other movie. But man, it actually looks really interesting, though.
Yeah, I'll meet you there too with a 3 just to be a bit conservative. But Art the Clown's look is absolutely horrifying. Just the look of, ah, I'm like, remind me to stay away from you. Like you make the Joker like have to take a break. Dude, you need to chill. But anyway, next up is Amsterdam. This is the latest from David O. Russell. In the 1930s, 3 friends witness a murder, are framed for it, and uncover one of the most outrageous plots in American history. There have been some reviews that have been coming out for this, and it describes it as a massive, just mess, a straight up mess, which is a shame because if you look at this cast, I mean, Christian Bale, Margot Robbie, John David Washington, Anya Taylor-Joy, Chris Rock, Matthias Schoenaerts, Michael Shannon, Mike Myers, Taylor Swift, Timothy Olyphant, Zoe Saldana, and that's literally just me naming it off of IMDb. I mean, Robert De Niro, Rami Malek. With this cast, this movie should not be getting nearly the reviews that it's been getting, but it has. I'm kind of worried because I've seen the trailer for this and several times, and that trailer is honestly quite intriguing. Whoever remixed that song deserves a raise.
Yeah, I was gonna rate this higher before the reviews poured in. Some of the reviews that poured in, I was a little concerned about it because people have been saying the movie's not that good. And I'm not even that big a fan of David O. Russell. The only other movie of his I've actually seen is Silver Linings Playbook. And I thought that movie was pretty overrated personally. However, I am intrigued by the plot, and like you said, the movie has an amazing cast. Um, I'm hopefully I could be in the minority on this because I like the trailer, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Um, I'm gonna go 3.5 because I'm still intrigued by it.
Yeah, I'll concur with you on that 3.5. I know that there have been some allegations made against David O. Russell as being, I guess, an abuser, but I haven't looked too deep into it, so I can't really comment on it. But I'll still be interested to seeing it regardless. Next up, massive hard left, Lyle Crocodile, a feature film based on the children's book about a crocodile that lives in New York City. Shawn Mendes is a crocodile, folks, in the year of our Lord 2022. Jacob, what say you?
One.
I thought
it
you were going
looked
to say 0.
it looked awful. Like who came up with this idea? Like out of all the people you could cast as a crocodile. I mean, I have nothing against Shawn Mendes. Some of his songs are okay. Can he act though?
I don't know. I haven't seen much of him acting, so it's going to
Um,
be interesting. But when I
I mean,
saw
the CGI looked bad, even in the trailer. It looked like one of them. Like I thought I was watching a parody just from watching the trailer. Like it just looks so desperate of a movie.
yeah, it really does, and I'll agree with you there, and I'll give it a 1. In the words of another Javier Bardem character, humanity was a mistake. Next up is Tor. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. This is directed by Todd Field. Set in the international world of classical music, the film centers around Lydia Tor, widely considered one of the greatest living composer-conductors and first ever female chief conductor of a major German orchestra. Jacob, what did you think about this one?
When you describe the premise, it sounds like a good premise, but I saw a trailer for this movie and it was like one of the most pretentious things I've ever seen in my life. It was a like I think it was Kate Blanchett and she's like smoking and there's like this very pretentious voiceover about like something about the pandemic and voices in your head and stuff like that. And it was going on for like 2 minutes. I'm like, what the heck is this crap? And the trailer didn't really do much for me, but I don't think that reflects upon the actual movie though. So it's hard for me to like really share my overall thoughts on it because I don't think the trailer did a good job in matching the premise. But I'm gonna go 2. It didn't really do much, even when you brought up the premise. It sounds like it's going to be a skip.
I'll go 2.5, with the only half being for Kate Blanchett. That woman is incredible. She can do no wrong in my eyes. All right, well, next up is Hellraiser. This is coming to Hulu. A take on Clive Barker's 1987 horror classic, where a young woman struggling with addiction comes into possession of an ancient puzzle box, unaware that its purpose is to summon the Cenobites. Now, I've actually have not seen the original Hellraiser. Now that this movie is coming out, I am considering watching it and reviewing the original just as like a comparison piece. But seeing this trailer, Jacob, what'd you think?
Um, I'm not the biggest fan on Hellraiser, the franchise. I have seen the first movie, and I didn't really care for it personally. even though it does have its fans. And so this trailer didn't really do much for me, but it was still a well done trailer, and I'm pretty sure it will bring on a new generation of fans of this franchise. I actually did like the visual style in the trailer, and those Cenobite creatures look as creepy as they were back in the 80s, so you got to give it credit for that at least. But because I'm not a fan of the first movie, I'll just give it a respectful 2.5.
I'll go 3. The trailer actually did look quite impressive, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they do. If Hulu has proven anything this year, they're a silent killer because Prey was awesome, and
Yeah.
it's like Hulu has been like the secret home of like really good like installments in franchises that everyone used to love that have fallen on hard times. Predator was one, Hellraiser is definitely one, so it's going to be interesting to see what David Bruckner does with it. Next up is Triangle of Sadness. Speaking of pretentious, a cruise for the super rich sinks, thus leaving survivors, including a fashion model celebrity couple, trapped on an island. Jacob, what did you think of this?
Um yeah, this trailer was a mixed bag for me. Like it looked like it looks well made. Plus you got I forgot who it was in the trailer. There was a really
Woody
big familiar
Harrelson?
face. Yeah, Woody Harrelson. Thank you. I saw so many trailers in the past few days. Some of these are starting to get to me, but Woody Harrelson was in this movie in the trailer. Uh, the whole sinking ship thing. I mean, I'm a sucker for those types of movies, but then the whole movie's leaning on this social commentary bit, and even like the trailer had all these like snippets of critic reviews. It's like this movie is a critique and it attacks the rich and devalues them to their core. And I'm like, I'm not the biggest fan of the rich, but I'm kind of like tired of like movies that like poke fun of them all the time. Honestly, I know there's not good people in that facet of society, but at least try to give it at least try to give it a break. At least show the good of humanity for once. Not try to focus on the negative all the time. Say everything sucks. It's starting to get really annoying. The movie, we'll see. There's intriguing bits, but I'm cautious at the same time because it's right in the middle. I went 3.
I'll go 2.5. This trailer just didn't really do all that much for me, especially with the whole eat the rich message, which, I mean, those movies are like a dime a dozen nowadays. It's like, we get it. Like, no one likes really rich people. Like, we understand this. Like, you don't have to, like, beat it over the head to us every other week. Like, we totally understand. And it's funny because I remember seeing a poll quote. It's from Next Best Picture, Matt Neglia on Twitter, which I'm sure we both follow him. So seeing his quote tweet on there, I was like, oh, that's pretty cool to see is on there. But it's like on this movie though, yeah, it just feels like just Oscar bait that's probably not going to work out. And I don't know for sure. But next up is The Redeem Team. This is coming to Netflix. Follows the story of the 2008 U.S. Olympics men's basketball team and how the Redeem Team set a new standard for American basketball. Now, this is from the same crew that did The Last Dance. I think I'm like one of the 5 people that actually did not watch that. I will get around to it eventually. But Jacob, what did you think of this?
It looked interesting. I'm not a sports guy, so I don't know anything about this story or the team. I don't know if it's one that I'll be rushing out to watch, but if you're into sports, I think the movie's going to be great. So I judged it more so on uh, how good it was trailer wise. If I was into sports, I would definitely watch it. I'm not like in a rush to see it though. So for me, I ended up just giving it a 3.
I'll go 3.5. I have a really soft spot for sports movies and sports documentaries, so I think I'll definitely be checking this one out. Next up is Halloween Ends. This is seemingly the last. Seemingly, we'll see how long that lasts. The saga of Michael Myers and Laurie Strode comes to a spine-chilling climax in this final installment. Let's put a million air quotes around that one of the franchise. I've seen this trailer now a few times, Jacob, and I didn't need to watch it back for this podcast because I had already seen it a ton. So, Jacob, what did you think?
Well, for one, I haven't seen Halloween Kills yet, so I can't fully get into the trailer for Halloween Ends. But what I will say, and this is something that I get annoyed with horror franchises, is that they keep milking these franchises to death with an endless supply of sequels to where, the first movie's so good, and a lot of times that should have been the only movie, but you keep milking it with so many unnecessary movies and it just becomes stale after a while. I did like Halloween 2018, though. To me, that was a better Halloween sequel than Halloween 2. And I wish, just from when I watched it back in 2018, I wish that was the end of the story because I like the payoff of it, 40 years later. I didn't feel the need to, have them make more Halloween movies until the end of time. I don't think this is the final chapter. I think they're just going to keep milking this until the very end. And I don't care for that. I honestly don't. The trailer for it wasn't bad. And if this really was the final chapter, I hope, they do a good job with it. It respects its fans. It respects the franchise, the original movie, and it is very satisfying. But I don't know. I honestly don't care at this point. I'll just stick to the original Halloween, and the 2018 one is like my two Halloween movies. I'm gonna go 2.5 on Halloween Ends.
Yeah, I'll meet you there on that one. I'll see Halloween Kills and I'll see if my score increases or decreases. Next up is White Bird, a Wonder Story, based on the book by the best-selling author of Wonder. This uplifting movie shows how one act of kindness can live on forever. Now, I actually have not seen Wonder. I've seen a few clips, but from what I did see, it was about a young boy whose face had like deformations, but it showed how despite how a face looks, it's really what's on the inside that counts. This movie is like the complete opposite of that. This is like World War II and like Nazis and like just the whole crazy stuff. Jacob, what about it?
Um, it's really weird because Wonder, even though the trailers for Wonder were not that good, I saw the movie with an open mind and absolutely loved it. I thought it was a really sweet family story and it had some great messages in it about, a kid that, that had such a kind heart, even though so many people were mean to him. I actually did really enjoy that story. Why are we doing a cinematic universe out of Wonder? You don't even have the kid from the original movie in it. The story's about the bully that picked on the kid from the first movie and his story after he got expelled from the school. I'm like, what are you doing? Is this like another weird way of setting up a franchise? It's like Dark Universe all over again. This is just weird. I will give it this. I like the director, Mark Forster. He previously directed wonderful films like Finding Neverland and Christopher Robin, which is, my opinion, is one of the better live action Disney films. I hope the movie's good just from his direction alone, but I'm so skeptical of the whole Wonder cinematic universe. Like, what are you doing? So for me, 2.5.
I'll go two, just because from what I have seen, Wonder is like a movie about uplifting stuff, and it's this like you completely lost me. It just like went straight into just what are we doing in World War II? Like, what are we doing? I mean, Helen Mirren's in it, so maybe that'll provide some good things, but even still. Anyway, next up is Till. Till is a profoundly emotional and cinematic film about the true story of Mamie Till Mobley's relentless pursuit of justice for her 14-year-old son, Emmett Till, who in 1955 was lynched while visiting his cousins in Mississippi. In Mamie's poignant journey of grief turned into action, we see the universal power of a mother's ability to change the world. I've seen this trailer now a handful of times. It's been attached to a couple movies I've seen in theaters. It looks pretty solid. Jacob, what about you?
Yeah, it's interesting. I complain about negativity stuff, like when we talked about Triangle of Sadness and like the commentary and stuff. Till is based on a true story, though, based on an actual tragedy. So I think with a story like this, it has to be done respectfully to get the point across. And I actually hope this movie actually delivers and it's more than just Oscar bait. I hope it actually respects the actual story, especially the tragedy of what happened to this kid. And we actually see an emotional journey with this mother fighting to seek justice for what happened in the most respectful way you can do. I think it's going to be raw, powerful, hopefully honest. I hope it delivers than just being an Oscar bait movie. I hope it's a good one at least. Probably a hard one to watch, but it's one of those where I feel like it's one I think you, I guess, need to learn, I guess, on the historical context. But it looks good just on the trailer. I'm gonna go 4.
I'll meet you there. I'll go 4. It's a strong trailer. It hits the beats that I thought it was going to hit in terms of emotionally, which is what I wanted. So yeah, it could be a sleeper hit. Well, next up, and let's take another hard left, Rosaline. I think I might as well just give it a 1 just to get it out of the way. This trailer just looked weird. It just did not sit well with me at all. It's a comedic retelling of Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, told from the point of view of Romeo's jilted ex, Rosaline, the woman Romeo first claims to love before he falls for Juliet. In the words in the words of Father Patrick from the Upon Friar Review channel, this is crap. It was crap to me. I just thought it looked really bad. Jacob, what about you?
Yeah, I didn't care for this trailer either. I think 1 might be a bit too harsh because at least I like the actress that plays Rosaline, Caitlin Denver, I think's her name, who was in Booksmart. And I think she's a fun comedic actress, but it doesn't look like the movie is executing her talents just from what I see in the trailer. I don't even care for the premise. Like, why are we doing this Romeo and Juliet story from the perspective of a character who wasn't even in the original story? Like, I don't fully get that. The humor didn't land for me in the trailer. I mean, it looks well made. I like the costumes at least, but yeah, this trailer didn't do much for me either. But maybe it's a case of bad marketing. I don't know. I'm gonna go 2 just because of the lead actress.
Yeah, Caitlin Dever is very talented. She deserves so much better than this. Well, next up is Stars at Noon. There was not a trailer for this, so I'll just read the synopsis. In 1984's Nicaragua, a mysterious English businessman and a headstrong American journalist strike up a romance as they soon become embroiled in a dangerous labyrinth of lies and conspiracies and are forced to try and escape the country. The cast includes Margaret Qualley, Danny Ramirez, John C. Reilly, and Benny Safdie. So it looks like a pretty solid cast. Jacob, just based off of that synopsis, what do you think?
Based on the synopsis, it looks interesting. I mean, John C. Riley's an underrated actor. Usually, he always commits to a role every time I see him in a movie. I mean, I can't really give it too high a rating because we don't have a trailer, but just on the premise alone, I'm going 3.
I'll go a little lower and say 2.5. I'm being a bit conservative, but John C. Riley is legitimately awesome in pretty much everything he's in, so there is that. Next up is The Curse of Bridge Hollow. This is coming to Netflix. A teenage girl who accidentally releases an ancient and mischievous spirit on Halloween, which causes decorations to come alive and wreak havoc, must team up with the last person she'd want in order to save their town, her father. When I first was watching this, I'm like, okay, this looks interesting. And then Marlon Wayans showed up. Oh no. So that kind of killed it for me, Jacob. What about you?
Mm. See, I haven't seen too many of Marlon Wayans stuff, so it didn't ring near as negative of an impact for me. I actually got a few chuckles out of the premise. It looks like a familiar story, though, of somebody accidentally unleashing something and other people have to team up to try to stop it. I mean, we've seen this in like the recent Goosebumps movie that came out a few years ago, did the exact same premise. But, and Hocus Pocus was another one as well. I don't know. I got a little bit of laughs out of the trailer, and I like the Halloween atmosphere just from watching the trailer. It looks pretty decent to me. I'm gonna go 3.5.
I'll go 2.5. I might be surprised. I'm leaving some room to be surprised, but Marlon Wayans has just done so many bad movies, and I haven't seen all of them, but just from the posters alone, I'm just like, that's bad. And I don't need to see it in order to just know that that's just straight up bad. But anyway, next up is, and I love in your list you said this message. This is the actual title of the movie. The actual title of the movie, it's called Bitch Ass. I promise you all that's the title of the movie. I'm not cursing just for the sake of cursing. That's
This
the
is
actual title of the movie. Don't come at
not
me.
a joke.
It's not a joke. A gang initiation goes wrong when a group of 4 recruits break into a house of horror as they're all forced to play deadly games for their lives. Win and you live, lose and you die. If for nothing else, I like this trailer because they got Tony Todd as this kind of Rod Serling type of figure. That was a solid get from director Bill Posley. But Jacob, what did you think about this one?
Um, well, cringy title aside, that's hard to take seriously.
Yeah.
Um, Putting Tony Todd in there's got me intrigued. That's all I'll say. Just because you got him in it, the movie actually I think is a little bit elevated. I don't think it's going to be like the best slasher in the world, but hey, if you got the Candyman in it and it's really diving into the horror elements, I'm intrigued. I'm going to go 3.
I'll go 3.5. I think this actually looks pretty solid, and I'm hoping that I'm proven right on that. Because, I mean, Tony Todd's just got the voice. Like, he's voicing Venom in the upcoming Spider Man game. Of course, he's Candyman. I mean, he's Death in the Final Destination movies. I'll see you soon. Like, he's just got the voice. So, Bill Posley's got points in my book just for that casting decision. Well, next up is The Good Nurse. This is coming to Netflix. An infamous caregiver is implicated in the deaths of hundreds of hospital patients. This is another trailer that scared me to death because this actually happened. This is based on a true story. So, from what I was able to tell, based on the unthinkable true story. So, this actually happened. And that scares me to death. Jacob, what do you think?
Yeah, it seems like the best horror stories and the scariest ones are the ones that's based in reality, where you think you know somebody and you think they're like the nicest, most caring person when it's actually the exact opposite. That's why the whole concept of Ted Bundy was absolutely terrifying. And if you've seen like the documentaries or that biopic movie that was made where Zach Efron played Ted Bundy, I thought that film was highly underrated. The Good Nurse actually looks pretty good. I'm normally not used to seeing Eddie Redmayne play a villainous character, but I guess because he's usually a nice guy, since I'm used to seeing him as like Newt Scamander and Fantastic Beasts. I'm actually excited to see the potential where he's not crazy over the top with a whispery voice like what the Wachowskis did in Jupiter Ascending.
I was hoping that you would bring that up.
Then you got Jessica Chastain, and she always delivers as well. I
Yeah.
think this movie has potential to be really good and pretty disturbing at the same time. I'm gonna go 4 just on the hype alone.
I'll go 4.5 just because I love Jessica Chastain and I equally love Eddie Redmayne. He needs a win. He really needs a win right now. Next up, staying in Netflix, is The School for Good and Evil. This is directed by Paul Feig. Best friends Sophie and Agatha find themselves on opposing sides of an epic battle when they're swept away into an enchanted school where aspiring heroes and villains are trained to protect the balance between good and evil. This pretty much looked like Diet Harry Potter to me. It could be interesting, but it didn't do much for me, Jacob. What did you think?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm a sucker for fantasy films. Like I love Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings, Chronicles of Narnia. Heck, I even dug Percy Jackson. Maybe not the best movies, but I love the lore and source material, and I hope the upcoming Disney Plus series does those books justice. This one looked fine to me. I like the concept, the school of good and evil, and that a lot of the fairy tales were derived from this school. Uh, I didn't really get much out of the performances, even though you got Lawrence Fishburne in a supporting role. And Paul Feig, I'm not sure if he can pull off the fantasy genre since he's primarily a comedy director, but I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. The trailer I thought was okay. Hopefully, the movie is better than the trailer makes it out to be. Just on the premise alone, I'm gonna go 3.5.
Yeah, I concur. I agree with you there, 3.5. Well, next up is Black Adam, and I've seen this trailer everywhere. I didn't need to rewatch it for this one. Nearly 5,000 years after he was bestowed with the almighty powers of the Egyptian gods and imprisoned just as quickly, Black Adam is freed from his earthly tomb, ready to unleash his unique form of justice on the modern world. Now, I'm a sucker for The Rock. I love him. I love his story. I think he's a very inspirational figure. And this cast looks pretty solid. You got Viola Davis back. You got Pierce Brosnan as Dr. Fate. That's an inspired choice. Aldous Hodge as Hawkman. But Jacob, what did you think of this one?
See, it's harder for me to get excited about upcoming DC stuff because clearly they don't have a plan, especially after the current fiasco at Warner Brothers Discovery. But all that aside, just watching the trailer and just looking at this as like a standalone DC movie, it looks a lot of fun. I can't wait to see The Rock as Black Adam, a character he's been wanting to play for years now. The action looks pretty explosive and a lot of fun. I mean, you got Pierce Brosnan in this movie. That's great casting right there. I don't think it's aiming to be the best comic book movie in the world, but as long as it embraces its premise and The Rock beating people up and being more of an anti-hero, it sounds like, I think it'll entertain. I think it's going to be an enjoyable movie, at least a fun one. I'm going to go 4 just on the premise and The Rock.
Yeah, I'll concur with you on that one. And it made me laugh in the trailer because it was like trying to get with Batman and Superman and all that. And I'm like, aw, are we still living in a world where we're trying to tie this to the Snyderverse? That's just adorable. But next up is Wendell and Wild. This is coming to Netflix. Two scheming demon brothers, Wendell and Wild, must face their arch nemesis, the demon-dusting nun, Sister Helly, and her two acolytes, the goth teens Kat and Raoul. However, Raoul cannot see them, so Kat helps Wendell and Wild to help him. This is directed by Henry Selick with production from Key and Peele, and there are also voices in this. Jacob, what do you think of this one?
Easy 5 for me. One, because I love stop motion animation. Two, you've got Henry Selick, who's responsible for two of my favorite stop motion movies, The Nightmare Before Christmas and Coraline, both amazing films. And then teaming up with Key and Peele just sounds like an interesting choice. I don't know how that's going to work creatively, but I love the dark visuals in the trailer. Plus, I saw it has a PG-13 rating, so it's going to have more of an edge compared to most mainstream animated films you see. Like, I don't think this could have been made by Disney and Pixar. So I appreciate that Netflix is going to try to make a few risks with the story. I'm really excited to see that. I think it's going to be an awesome movie. It's easily my most anticipated of all the October releases.
Yeah, I'm going 5-2, and I promise I'm not just parroting Jacob. I mean this wholeheartedly. This trailer looked very inventive. I'm a sucker for Henry Selick. I mean, Nightmare Before Christmas, need I say more? Corpse Bride, he was fantastic doing that. Even that James and the Giant Peach movie, it was weird, but I still liked it. And just overall, there's so much to love in this trailer. Hopefully, it's as good as advertised. Well, next up is Ticket to Paradise. This is coming to theaters. A divorced couple that teams up and travels to Bali to stop their daughter from making the mistake they think they made 25 years ago. This has George Clooney and Julia Roberts as a couple. It also has, I believe, Caitlin Dever in it as their daughter. Yes, it is. So automatically looking better than Rosaline. But Jacob, what did you think of this one?
Yeah, this movie looks fun. I actually enjoy George Clooney and Julia Roberts. They usually have good chemistry, especially if you've seen like the Ocean's movies. I think they've done rom coms as well, but I haven't seen any of their rom coms, so I can't comment on those. But this movie just looked like a breezy, fun time with two great actors. Ridiculous premise. It doesn't look like it's going to reinvent the genre, but it just looks like a fun time with enjoyable actors and fun characters. So I'm going to go 3.5 because of the premise and the cast.
I'll go I'll go 4. I actually think this is charming. It's definitely a movie we've seen before, but it's with George Clooney and Julia Roberts, two actors that I really like, and it's with Caitlin Dever in it, and it looks like a movie that Hollywood really doesn't make a ton of anymore. So I I think I will support it in that regard.
Actually, I might bump it up to 4 because I just realized I remembered the trailer. It said it was from the same director who did Mamma Mia, Here We Go Again. I ate that movie up back in 2018.
Yeah, me
So,
too.
yeah, I'm going 4 now.
Their version of Waterloo absolutely slaps. I listen to
Yes.
it on the bike all the time. It's great. Well, next up is the Banshees of Inisherin. I'm probably butchered that, and I apologize in advance. Two lifelong friends find themselves in an impasse when one abruptly ends their relationship with alarming consequences for both of them. This is directed by Martin McDonough. He's directed movies like Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, and In Bruges, which actually reunites the two main stars of that, Colin Farrell and Brendan Gleeson. Haven't seen In Bruges, but I've heard nothing but great things. Jacob, what'd you think?
The movie looks interesting. I like the pairing of actors, especially Brendan Gleeson and Colin Farrell. I'm intrigued at the story at how they got to this point where they don't want to be friends anymore. I'm really intrigued by that. The director I have seen Three Billboards, and it was a good movie. I don't think it was an amazing movie. I'm not a fan of the ending of Three Billboards, but I like the general story. I hope this one is really good. Like I said, I like the cast, and I like especially the Irish atmosphere. The countryside is reflected well in the cinematography, so I hope it's at least a good movie, at least on a technical craft. So, with the direction and everything, I'm going 4.
I'll go 4.5. This movie really like hit the right notes with me, especially the mystery of why are these people like friends? Like why are they not friends anymore? Something must have happened, and the trailer doesn't show it. So you're just sitting there like something bad must have happened to where Brendan Gleeson is mad at Colin Farrell, and Colin Farrell's like, let's just bury the hatchet, friend. And Brendan Gleeson's like, there ain't no burying no hatchet. And if you come near me, I'll slice off a finger just to show how much I mean it. I'm like, it's not that serious, guys. Like, what's going on? So it's going to be interesting to say the least. This movie's getting great reviews coming out of Sundance, so it's looking like potentially awards, but we'll see. Well, next up is Raymond and Ray. There was not necessarily a trailer for this, but there was a clip released, which Jacob and I both watched. Two half brothers reunite at the funeral of their father. And I'm going at least 3 on this one just for 2 reasons. Ethan Hawke, Ewan McGregor. They're 2 actors that I think can do no wrong, and they're at least going to carry the movie.
Yeah, I would go 3 as well, just on the very same reasons. I wish I would give it a higher rating if we got the full trailer because the clip didn't really do much for me. It didn't really show off anything with the premise or the real talents of these actors. But just on Ethan Hawke and Ewan McGregor, 2 great actors. Yeah, I think 3 seemed about right for this one.
Yeah, well, next up is My Policeman. This is coming to Amazon Prime. The arrival of Patrick into Marion and Tom's home triggers the exploration of seismic events from 40 years previously. This movie has Harry Styles, Emma Corrin, I hope I'm saying her name right, and Rupert Everett. Jacob, what did you think of this trailer?
It's interesting. I'm not the biggest fan of love triangle stories, and so the fact that you're dealing with that in this movie, It just does not appeal to me in the slightest. Even if it wasn't doing the whole gay aspect in the trailer, uh, I still wouldn't have cared because I don't even care for love triangles when it involves straight couples. So why should I care if it involves somebody of the same sex when I don't care for the love triangle in other movies? So I like the cast though. I think the movie could deliver acting wise, and it looks like it's well made and well shot and everything. But because this style of storytelling just isn't for me, I'm gonna go 2.5.
Yeah, I'll meet you there. I just thought it looked just kind of average to me personally. Well, next up is After Sun, and I believe there was no trailer for this, so I'll just read off IMDb. Sophie reflects on the shared joy and private melancholy of a holiday she took with her father 20 years earlier. Memories real and imagined fill the gaps between as she tries to reconcile the father she knew with the man she didn't. Just based off of that alone, Jacob, what did you think?
Uh, Again, it's hard talking about these when you haven't seen a trailer,
Yeah.
but I guess respectfully, I'd probably go 2.5.
Yeah, and I'll meet you there too, and it's especially because this movie actually, based off the Metacritic reviews, it was at a 91. So clearly critics really, really loved this. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. Next up is Armageddon Time. This is directed by James Gray, a deeply personal coming of age story about the strength of family and the generational pursuits of the American dream. And before we started recording this, I saw on Twitter from Variety that this has already been submitted for Academy Awards for Anne Hathaway and Jeremy Strong and Anthony Hopkins. So this is a big Oscar push for this one. Jacob, what about it?
This movie actually, I hope actually does deliver all the hype. I've been a fan of James Gray's previous films. He directed The Lost City of Z, which was highly underrated, and then his last film, Ad Astra, which nobody watched, but I thought it was an excellent sci-fi movie. So he's 2 for 2 for me. I hope this one seems like a smaller, more intimate story, considering how larger in scope his other two films were visually. More of a coming of age story that looks like it's exploring like generational gaps and racism and among other things in the 1980s. I think the movie has a big heart that I'm excited to see explore, and I like the cast already, like Anne Hathaway and especially Anthony Hopkins, who I think is going to be the heart of the movie. I think this movie has so much potential just from the incredible director you got attached to it. So I'm going to go 4.5.
I'll go 4.5 as well. I actually did quite like this trailer, and I love very Welsh man Anthony Hopkins calling his grandson a mensch. I don't know why I love that so much. I just did. Well, next up is Call Jane. A married woman with an unwanted pregnancy lives in a time in America where she can't get a legal abortion and works with a group of suburban women to find help. This movie stars Elizabeth Banks, Sigourney Weaver, Kate Mara, and Chris Messina, among others. And this was directed by the woman who wrote the screenplay for Carol, which starred Kate Blanchett and Rooney Mara. Jacob, what did you think of this?
To me, this movie could be either two things. It could be a highly entertaining movie with a great cast. I mean, you got, like you said, Sigourney Weaver and Elizabeth Banks, excellent actors. But it can also be super preachy at the same time, especially with it dealing with like women's rights and abortions, like a big subject matter. That's like a touchy subject in general. That's very divisive, even in 2022. So this could either like be a really entertaining movie that embraces the actors and the premise, or it hits you on the head with its message and its themes and divide its audience. So I honestly don't know what to say about this trailer. It kind of rubbed me off the wrong way from watching the trailer because it felt like it was being over preachy even in the trailer. So I'm kind of mixed on this one, to be honest. I'm going to go 3.
Yeah, I'll agree with you on that one. And it definitely felt preachy from the trailer, especially a shot in the background where it says "write women back into her story," which I'm like,
Yeah.
please. And I get why this movie's being released with the whole Roe v. Wade thing and that whole mess that is, but it's like with a overtly message-based movie like that, you can go, like you said, one of two directions. Something like, say, Spotlight or Promising Young Woman, that's in the positive direction. Something like, say, I don't know, Men, I mean, that's in the bad direction. So it could really go either way, like you said. Next up is All Quiet on the Western Front. This is coming to Netflix. A young German soldier's terrifying experiences and distress on the Western Front during World War One. I believe this is a remake of the 1930 film of the same name, Jacob. I believe that's correct.
Yeah, I think so. And I have seen the original from 1930. Very
I,
impressive movie for its time.
I actually have not, and I guess this is the universe saying you should watch it. And so I'm like, all right, there you go. So what'd you think?
Five easily. I was enthralled by this trailer. I think this, of all the war stories, I think this was one right for a remake, especially now that we have movies like Saving Private Ryan and Hacksaw Ridge that can really dive into like show like the real horrors of the actual conflicts. A story like All Quiet on the Western Front that explored similar sentiments in 1930, but didn't really have much of the technology like we have today. I think this could make for a very raw, powerful movie if made in the right hands. It's already getting a lot of great buzz. And it's even, I think, being submitted for like best foreign film at the Academy Awards. As this is German based, as we follow the German soldiers in World War One. And also, you got Daniel Bruhl in this movie, who's an excellent actor. He's Zemo in the MCU, and I love his role in Quentin Tarantino's *Inglorious*. I think he was great in it as well. So I think he's an excellent underrated actor, and I hope he gets some recognition for this movie.
Yeah, I hope so too. Daniel Bruhl's awesome, and I'm giving it a 5 as well. This trailer is fantastic. Next up, and this is our penultimate movie, Pray for the Devil. I've seen this trailer one too many times for my liking. A nun prepares to perform an exorcism and comes face to face with a demonic force with mysterious ties to her past. This movie stars Virginia Madsen, among others. Jacob, what did you think of this?
And it's not really for me. I'm not the biggest fan of like exorcism movies. I don't really find a lot of them that scary. Not even The Exorcist didn't really do much for me. I think the only time where that was integral to a horror movie where I actually was a little unsettled by it were like the two Conjuring movies that James Wan directed, because James Wan's an excellent director. But as far as these movies go, it looks all right. There's a couple of like slightly creepy things in the trailer, like the demon voice you hear, like "Come to me, come in me," and all that. I'm like, that's not too bad. I mean, the story about the nun sounds kind of interesting. I'm kind of like hit and miss on it per se, but I'm hoping it's a mildly entertaining film in this genre. So optimistically, I'm going 3.5.
Yeah, I'll agree with you there. Like I said, I've seen this trailer too many times, so when it finally releases in theaters, I'm like, great, I don't have to see this trailer ever again. And that creepy old man going, "Let me in," and do the hell thing with his tongue is like, just get off of my screen, you. And last but certainly not least, let's talk about Run, Sweetheart, Run. There is not a trailer for this, so I'll just read the synopsis. A woman tries to get home alive after her blind date turns violent. Just based off of that alone, what do you think?
Um, the premise sounds interesting. I'm hoping it delivers on that. I'm think might sound crazy. I'm gonna go 3.5.
I'll go 3. I'll be a little more conservative than you, but it does, if it's done right, it could potentially be very interesting. Right, and that's the October preview. There's some gems, a lot of mediocre stuff, it sounds like, but it seems like studios are making the big push towards Oscar season. We're in that sweet spot. It's like October, November, December. It's like we're gonna get a lot of Oscar bait type movies, fair to say.
Yeah, that's usually the case around fall season. It'll be interesting seeing which movies actually do get the Oscar buzz and the Oscar push, and which are the ones that'll come off as like the lame Oscar bait. That always fascinates me more than anything else as someone who doesn't really care about the Oscars in general.
Yeah, likewise. But just looking ahead to next month, and this isn't the November preview, but just taking a look at next month, we got movies like Weird, the Al Yankovic story, which just won big at TIFF. We also got The Fablemans, which also won big. We got The Son, Florian Zeller's next movie after The Father. Next, she has to do The Holy Spirit to complete or he has to do The Holy Spirit to complete the trilogy. But but also The Menu. So it's looking like we're definitely in Oscar bait season for the remainder of the year.
Yeah, for sure.
But anyway, what movies are you all looking forward to, or series, or whatever you all are looking forward to? Leave it in the comments. We would love to read what you have to say. And that's another episode in the books. Thank you all so much for watching. Jacob, it is a privilege and a pleasure, as always. Tell the people where they can find you.
They can find me on Letterboxd, Twitter, and Facebook. And of course, you can subscribe to my 2 YouTube channels. My main YouTube channel is where I do movie reviews, TV reviews, ranking videos, all that fun stuff. I also have a second channel called Storytime with Jacob, where I do all the book reviews and read alongs. Currently on my second channel, I'm still in the middle of, of Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, which is such a massive book. That was the first big book in the Harry Potter franchise, but I'm enjoying that revisit every minute of it. And then, of course, like I said, I do all the main movie stuff on my main channel. Recent videos that dropped on my channel. I've recently, did my weekend watch party on Next of Kin and my celebrating Disney video on Mickey, Donald, Goofy, the Three Musketeers. Other videos coming this week. Actually, we are recording this on a Monday, so the video that just dropped was my review of the Emoji Movie. And other videos I got coming this week, I'm reviewing episodes 17 through 20 of the sitcom Full House. I also got Alfred Hitchcock videos coming up for the movies I mentioned earlier in the podcast for Foreign Correspondent and Mr. and Mrs. Smith. And I also got an upcoming Celebrating Disney coming up for the very underrated 1959 Disney film, Third Man on the Mountain. So be on the lookout for those videos coming this week. If you haven't watched any of my videos, feel free to subscribe to all the wonderful content over on my channel.
Subscribe to the man. He totally deserves it. And as far as this channel goes, by the time this podcast will drop, it will be the 28th, which means that Scary Mania will begin fully Saturday, October 1st with the Bride of Frankenstein review, and it's going to be full force 31 reviews in 31 days. The podcast will still be continuing, so it will be dropping Wednesday like usual. Wednesday will just be double upload days, so I'll be doing as many of those in advance as possible. But that's coming this Saturday, and this coming weekend for movies, I plan to check out at the very least Smile, which I completely roasted that trailer on in the September preview, but it's been getting some actual good reviews, so I may have to eat my words on that one. It'll be interesting. And then that's all. That's all for the both of us. That is Jacob Martin. My name is Ryan Cam. Thank you again so much for watching. We will see you in the next one. Y'all take care now.